To the US now, where members of Congress have made a tense surprise visit to a New Jersey detention centre where they've met with arrested immigrants separated from their children. There have been demonstrations outside detention centres across the United States today protesting President Donald Trump's zero-tolerance policy of separating families who cross the Mexican border illegally. We're going to have more on that coming up. But first, Bridget Burke reports on today's surprise Father's Day visit.
Shut it down! Shut it down!
Shut it down. Shut it down. A fiery exchange at the Elizabeth Contract Detention Facility in New Jersey as members of Congress today paid a surprise visit.
Get the supervisor.
Democratic Congressman Jerrold Nadler demanding entry.
You're not going to get the supervisor?
The group of Democratic lawmakers joined immigration rights activists to visit with detainees and protest US President Donald Trump's zero-tolerance immigration policy. Mr. Nadler is also a member of the Judiciary Committee.
This administration is behaving like a bunch of thugs and gangsters in saying we're going to do terrible things. And it's everybody else's fault unless you enable us to do even worse things.
New York Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney said what she had seen was heartbreaking.
We met with 5 gentlemen, 3 of whom had their young daughters or sons or sisters or brothers torn from their arms, some in the middle of the night. And we are here in protest of the Trump administration that is dividing families and tearing children away from their mother and father. Believe me, tearing children from the arms of their mother and their father is not the right decision. It has got to stop, and we are united in going back to Congress and fighting for it.
Jerrold Nadler told media nursing babies and disabled children were among those taken from their parents.
And most recently, a distraught father choosing to take his own life rather than live apart from his children. These are the misdeeds of an administration speaking in our name that appears to lack a moral compass, that stands in defiance of our nation's history as a beacon of freedom and a refuge for the oppressed, and that shames our country by the actions it has taken.
In May, US Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced a zero-tolerance policy in which all those apprehended entering the United States illegally would be criminally charged. Congressman Bill Pascrell said it must stop.
It's Father's Day, damn it. And you have a right to talk to your children, and you don't even know where your children are. That's unacceptable. How dare you go into the Bible when you're trying to save your own rear end, your own job, Mr. Sessions. That's what you're doing.
The government says that 1,995 children were separated from 1,940 adults at the US-Mexico border between April 19 and May 31 as the Trump administration implements stricter border enforcement policies.
We must not turn our backs on people who are fleeing from danger, from murderous gangs, from political oppression. If the United States has any reason for being, it's to be a refuge and a haven for those who should not fear political oppression or violence on their families. Today's visit has strengthened my resolve to fight this injustice, as I'm sure it has the resolve of everyone else here.
More than 3,000 kilometres away, protesters held a Father's Day vigil in support of the children being held without their parents in a McAllen, Texas detention facility, one of 9 detention centres along the United States southwest border.
What we see with the separation of families, we are seeing something inhumane that I do not believe is American, which is why we're carrying the American flags. I do not think that that the current administration can rewrite what empathy means.
I think people are fired up, and I think they're ready to go, and and at least let people know that there are a lot of people out there that aren't going along with this.
Border Patrol Chief for the Rio Grande Valley, Manuel Padilla, defended the strict new policy.
The zero tolerance policy is intended to deter people from breaking the law. Adults. If they are accompanied by a child, that child is temporarily separated from them as they go through a judicial process, and that is no different from a United States citizen parent that is going through a judicial process prosecuted for violating the law and separated from his or her children as well.
Mr. Padilla said no child under 5 years of age had been separated from a parent or guardian in his facility, except for when they were found to be a gang member. He said of the 1,174 children who had been separated from their families at the centre over the past month, 463 had been reunited with their caregivers, whilst 711 had gone into the care of Health and Human Services. White House advisor Kellyanne Conway defended the policy.
Nobody likes seeing babies ripped from their mother's arms, from their mother's wombs, frankly. But we have to make sure that DHS's laws are understood through the soundbite culture that we live in. There are 3 circumstances by which DHS evaluates a child at the border. One is, does this child actually have a custodial or familiar relationship with the adult? And number 2, is the child in any danger? And plenty have been over time. Some adults are using children to gain access to the border.
In a rare statement, First Lady Melania Trump weighed in on the crisis, saying she hated seeing children separated from their families and hoped both sides of the debate could work together towards a resolution. For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.